Welcome to Fantastic Vision. Please subscribe us before you watch today's video. Nexperia has seen new developments. Recently, Nexperia, a Chinese-controlled semiconductor group, issued a series of responses from its Dutch headquarters regarding the related events, explicitly stating that it remains committed to development in China. The implication is that even though the Dutch government has seized actual control of Nexperia, the Dutch semiconductor company is unwilling to relinquish its market share in China. However, as the situation continues to escalate, the scenario the Netherlands did not want to see has begun to materialize. At the end of September 2025, a wartime regulation that had been shelved for 70 years was suddenly invoked. The Dutch government, citing the Goods Availability Act, forcibly took over Nexperia on the grounds of discovering serious management problems. This reason sounds plausible, but it doesn't stand up to scrutiny. It's important to understand that Nexperia primarily produces automotive logic chips, the fundamental components that control car lights, airbags, and/or locks. The chip manufacturing process is the 350-nanometer process, which has long been domestically produced in China. Using chips with this level of technology as a basis for action is, frankly, completely untenable. The aim was to gain control of Nexperia's automotive chip supply chain, thereby enhancing the Netherlands' influence within the European industrial system and currying favor with the United States. Ironically, the SCOF cabinet, which made this decision, was already in a caretaker government at the time. According to European political conventions, caretaker governments can only handle routine affairs. Major asset decisions and foreign policy adjustments are strictly prohibited. Now, however, the Dutch government, on the verge of leaving office, has abruptly bypassed legal procedures, leaving its successor with an intractable mess. This is hardly about safeguarding national security, it's clearly a political gambler making a final bet. Faced with this sudden attack, China's response was textbook perfect, combining firmness and flexibility. First, in the diplomatic arena, Chinese diplomats solemnly expressed their views to the Netherlands. Commerce Minister Wang Wentao spoke with Dutch Economy Minister Karen Kermans at the latter's request, using strong, but tactful language. We urge the Dutch side to proceed from the overall perspective of maintaining the security and stability of the global supply chain and resolve the issue properly as soon as possible. This wasn't pressure, but rather a move to effectively push the issue back onto the other side's turf. If they want to talk about rules, then they should handle it according to the rules. Secondly, regarding the domestic situation, the suspension of exports of key components from Nexperia China immediately caused its Dutch headquarters to experience supply disruptions. Pressure from European automakers indirectly pushed the Netherlands to negotiate with China. Finally, this move directly shattered the Netherlands' carefully constructed national security lie. On November 1st, a spokesperson for the Ministry of Commerce emphasized, "Companies facing actual difficulties are welcome to contact us promptly. We will comprehensively consider the actual situation of enterprises and grant exemptions to eligible exports." The implication is that the Dutch government was the instigator of this incident. The crisis in the European and even global supply chains was not triggered by Chinese companies, but by the Dutch government. China even provided export exemptions to ensure the stability of the international supply chain, while its own companies' rights were being violated. The difference is stark when applied to the Netherlands. In fact, Nexperia's headquarters in the Netherlands has gradually come to terms with the reality. Currently, about 40% of Nexperia's orders come from the Chinese market. Losing revenue from China would significantly reduce the profitability of Nexperia's headquarters in the Netherlands. Faced with this situation, Nexperia Netherlands, in interviews with foreign media, had to express its continued commitment to developing in China. In short, it doesn't want to completely lose its market share and customer orders in China due to the measures taken by the Dutch government. Currently, the situation is likely to develop in three directions, all of which are scenarios the Netherlands does not want to see. First, the Netherlands could forcibly seize control of Nexperia's headquarters and refuse to return related rights in subsequent negotiations, seriously infringing on the substantial interests of Chinese companies. In this scenario, China has many countermeasures at its disposal. For example, China can use the opportunity to adjust its supply chains, particularly those crucial to rare earths and European industry, to exert pressure on the Netherlands and even Europe, forcing them to handle the Nexperia situation properly within the bounds of the rules. In other words, China is no longer the China of decades ago. The Netherlands' attempt to pressure Chinese companies through bullying will ultimately only cause greater economic losses to its own country. Secondly, a settlement could be reached between the two sides regarding the Nexperia semiconductor dispute, with the Netherlands making concessions on key issues in exchange for China's support and respect. This outcome is the most beneficial option for the Netherlands' existing economic model. It's important to understand that Dutch semiconductor equipment manufacturers, including ASML, have heavily relied on revenue from the Chinese market in recent years. Chinese companies are also continuously increasing their imports of many low to mid-range semiconductor equipment from Dutch companies. Under this model, close cooperation and the elimination of misunderstandings are actually the most advantageous for the economic development of both countries. If the Netherlands chooses to persist in its wrong course, not only will ASML's orders be affected, but Nexperia China could also completely build a domestic supply chain, replacing products from its Dutch headquarters. This would lead to the further postponement of the dispute. And ultimately, Nexperia China would become completely independent, operating as a completely new supply chain. The Dutch headquarters would also become relatively independent, shipping its own chip products to the European market. However, changing packaging channels and supply chains takes time. Even if localization is achieved, Nexperia's market share and revenue will be significantly lower than before. In conclusion, the root cause of the Nexperia incident in the Netherlands lies in the Dutch authorities' fundamental misjudgment of the globalized supply chain.